Raising the Bets is brought to you by the Star Quest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to Raising the Bets, a family podcast of pirates and penguins. We're a Catholic couple raising 5 kids outside of Boston. Join us as we share the joys and challenges of marriage, homeschool, and our adventures near and far as we make sense of the world and experience the best parts of our culture. I'm Don Bettinelli.
And I'm Melanie Bettinelli.
To start this week, I wanted to read a bit of feedback we got from a listener. This was on Instagram. So SQPN has an Instagram channel. I don't talk about that very much on our shows. I don't mention it. The only thing we put there is links to the show, of course. But there, we do have an Instagram. It's StarQuest Network, if you want to follow us there. And we have one follower, Lily Marie and Me, writes of our last show, I love lasagna. I enjoy both vegetable and meat, LOL. And the reboot of Battlestar Galactica is my all-time favorite TV show ever. Best writing in a show, most epic arc, I just love it. I think the best TV shows have the best writing with focus on the relationships and character development. The setting, whether outer space or a New York apartment, doesn't really matter. Anyway, I enjoyed the tangent today, LOL. Have a great week. Well, thank you, Lily Marie. Or actually, Lily Marie and Me, so you're probably not Lily Marie. You're probably the me part. Anyway, I think what she's referring to with the Battlestar Galactica, remember I was talking about how, I think I was talking about, in this show, the shows that jump, they have like a big jump in time,
right? And
like you have to like, whoa, like where did that go? Like, what happened in that huge span of time that you left behind? But yeah, I have to say with Battlestar Galactica, it worked out. You're right. I mean, it was actually really good, that series, and when they did the jump, it eventually worked out okay. But some shows, it just annoys me. Like, ooh, where'd they go? In fact, we're going to be talking about something similar for you in a second.
Right.
When we talk about what we've been reading and watching, that's going to come up again. But thank you for your feedback. We love getting feedback from everyone, and we've been getting more of it. I just haven't been able to read all of it. Not all of it is I think intended to be read, as we record. But thank you everyone for your feedback.
Yes. We love feedback.
We love feedback. It lets us know that somebody's listening. So let's talk about what we were doing this past week. Last Monday, so a whole week ago, was a special day. It was Columbus Day, but that's not why it was a special day. But it was our friend, Sister Karla's professional final vows.
Yes.
So she's a Trappistine of the Benedictines, right?
Yeah, the Trappistines are... Trappistine is a reform of the Benedictine, so she's a Benedictine nun of the Trappistine variety.
And then there was a reform of that too, right?
No, the Trappistine is actually a reform of the Cistercian, which is a reform of the Benedictine.
Right.
Yeah.
Stricterer and stricterer. Yes. So there is a monastery near here, not too far from us, the Mount St. Mary's in, where is that? Franklin?
Rentham.
It's like really right next to Franklin, actually. Their solar panel field. That's one of their things. They have a solar panel field that they sell the electricity to the town. Anyway, Franklin. So it's in Franklin. Anyway, our friend Karla, I used to work with her at the Archdiocese of Boston, and about 7 years ago, almost exactly, she entered the novitiate for this monastery. And when you hear us talk about Mother Sophia, when we talk about the gospel, she's the Mother Superior of that monastery. Anyway, she took her final vows on Monday.
Yeah, that was really cool.
And you got to watch it. I didn't get to. I was in recordings, but
right. They live streamed the mass, and
so Cardinal Sean.
Cardinal Sean was there, though he was not the.
He wasn't the celebrant.
Primary celebrant. Well, I mean, I suppose the cardinal's always the primary celebrant, but
he didn't do the homily. And
he didn't do the homily.
Yeah.
I think the Benedictine abbot?
The abbot from St. Joseph's in Spencer, probably.
Yeah, I wasn't sure actually which monastery he was from.
The famous Spencer Abbey of the beer.
Spencer beer?
Yes.
Okay. I knew that he was an abbot. He was wearing the skull cap, and I was just not sure exactly where he was from.
Yes, I'm fairly certain that's who it is.
Okay. Anyway, but Cardinal Sean did preside, and it was really lovely bilingual mass because Sister Karla is from Brazil, and so they were live streaming. The program was in English and Portuguese, and it was very clear that they were very cognizant of the fact that her family would be in Brazil, in Sao Paulo, would be watching.
Which is awesome.
It was really cool. And they did the profession. Monday was also the feast day of Our Lady of Aparecida.
Which was an apparition in Brazil.
Right. So she's the patroness of Brazil. And so I really loved the way that they brought in carried in a statue of Our Lady of Aparecida, and it was a really lovely way to have her Brazilian heritage as part of the ceremony. I just really loved it. She's
frankly probably the only Brazilian in the order, like in the monastery. They have a variety of backgrounds though. They were originally Irish. They came from the original Trappists came from Ireland to found this monastery.
Right. Mother Sophia is British, and wasn't Mother Maureen
Irish?
She was Irish.
Oh, no.
She might have been. I think she might have been Australian.
Maybe she was. I'm trying to remember. I remember an accent. I know that some of the older nuns, that were Irish. They had the accent. Cardinal Sean, of course, speaks Portuguese fluently. He has a doctorate in Portuguese.
Right. So he did the opening prayers in Portuguese, and several parts of the Mass were in Portuguese. I think in one of the readings, I think Sister Karla actually read the second reading in Portuguese.
But it's so awesome to see. I mean, she's a beautiful young woman who, she's probably, well, let's see, when she went in, she was probably in her mid to late 20s. So she's maybe mid 30s now. And so she's so vibrant, alive. When she smiles, her whole face lights up.
Yeah, she's one of those people who has the smile that makes the entire room. Like everybody said that. In fact, that was one of the things that was mentioned, I think, by Mother Sophia, was just how Sister Karla's smile, like everybody notices it.
Right. It's so awesome. And she has so many friends all over. I know Anna was watching from Alaska, and lots of people from around the Boston area were watching. So it's really great. I got to see some of the pictures and some of the replay of it. But it's just I'm so happy for her. It was such a wonderful, such a dedication to enter. I mean, this is, Trappists are no joke. They're serious about their vows, and they like, her parents moved back to Brazil when she was entering the monastery. Like, she's not going to see her parents maybe ever again, in person. There's a real possibility of that. It is
right.
That's a serious commitment she's made, and it's amazing.
Right, because Benedictines make a vow of stability, so her vows are to stay in this particular location. Like, this is her home for the rest of her life, and she'll be buried there at Mount St. Mary's. I mean,
there's the odd occasion when they found new monasteries,
but that's the only time that they really transfer to a different location, is if they're sent under obedience to and found a new. Maybe
they'll found a Trappist monastery in Brazil. That actually would be kind of awesome. So the other thing, the one thing that you might want to know about this particular monastery is they support themselves by selling candy. So it's TrappistineQualityCandy.com, maybe. But if you if you Google Trappistine Quality Candy, you'll find them. They make amazing chocolate.
Really good chocolate.
I think it's so funny. The two Trappist monasteries in Massachusetts, the men and women, one sells beer and one sells chocolate. It's like the men sell beer, the women sell chocolate. It's kind of awesome.
It is. I'm sad we haven't been out to Mount St. Mary's in a while, but we usually try to go about once a year. And
well, this year it's just, you can't go.
Yeah, but they're not even open right now.
But if you're looking to get chocolate for Christmas, as gifts, for the Thanksgiving table, definitely check them out. They deserve your support. They do. They're a wonderful order, but they also make a wonderful chocolate. So definitely check them out.
And their facility is all like very green,
high tech,
very green, very high tech,
yes.
like green energy.
Yeah, I mentioned the solar panels. They also have a big wind turbine. I think they're all off grid, which is a very Benedictine thing, like to be
self-supporting. Yeah. And I think they also use geothermal. I think the candy plant is run all on geothermal energy.
Yes, I remember that. Yeah, it's pretty wild. It's so.
We actually did a really cool tour of the monastery a few years ago, where they Mother Maureen gave a tour and explained all of the like green energy stuff that they were doing.
Yeah, they had sort of an open house day for friends of the monastery. It was really neat.
Yeah, it was really cool. We had to. Some people even went up in the wind turbine. We were not quite that bold.
Well, the kids were still fairly little at that point. But
it made for a great homeschooling science lesson.
Yeah, it is wild. And like I said, they generate excess electricity from the solar panels, which they sell to the town. So that's kind of neat. Although I don't think they own the panels; they lease the land, or there's some sort of arrangement that some company installed the panels and whatever. But you know what I mean. So that was awesome. That was a big deal this week. The other nice thing that happened today is that Ben got to go to Mass.
Yes, very exciting.
We may have mentioned that a couple of the kids have had trouble, anxiety wearing masks for long periods of time, including going to Mass, especially at Mass, because at Mass you're sitting there and you have all that time to think about the fact that you're wearing a mask and you're having to breathe through it and that sort of thing. So since we've been able to start going back to Mass, the churches reopened in June. We've been alternating weeks, essentially. You go 1 week with the kids who will go, and I would go the other week with the ones who would go, and then the other one of us would stay home with the ones who would stay home. And we've been working slowly to overcome that, very slowly. And Ben reached a point where he's able to go to Scouts, which is an hour and a half. And we did an outing to the Lego store, and so he was able to do that, and that was took longer than a Mass would. And so today, what was it today? What was the question you asked him?
Well, I said, I think that when we've talked about going to Mass, we've kind of focused on do you think you're ready? Can you? And sort of focusing on the how hard it is.
Right.
And so instead I said, well, okay, so let's think about all the things that you have been able to do and what's got you to the point of being able to do them. And so I started listing off all the things that he's done, like you said, Scouts and the Lego store and going to the bakery for his birthday and all of these things. And, what's the positive thing that we can look forward to? Yes, ideally Mass is its own reward, and he does love going to Mass. I mean,
when you're 11.
But you're 11. Sometimes, to overcome that anxiety, you need a little bit of more. And so he said that he thought maybe if he got an extra long iPad turn, that might be enough to help him to overcome the anxiety. And it worked. It's like magic.
Yes, he's like, okay, he goes. So he came. It was my turn this week, so we were able to go, and there wasn't a single problem. There was no anxiety at all related to it. It was perfect, and so thank God he was able to receive communion for the second time since March. The first time was at the outdoor Mass,
right on 4th of July Mass,
right, and so now outside. we have to help the other child to overcome the anxiety and to get into the same place. Unfortunately, it's not going to be the same sort of.
No, everybody's different.
Yeah, everybody's got different inducements, but we're coming along. It's coming along. So, I am looking forward to the day when all 7 of us can be at Mass together again for the first time.
Yes, indeed. Me too.
The beginning of Lent. This long Lent of 2020. Yeah. So that was good. One other thing I wanted to mention, we finally got to play D&D again as a family yesterday, present company accepted.
I do not play.
You don't play D&D, but
I'm not really a role-playing game sort of person.
It is so funny. So obviously Ben and Sophie are at the sort of bottom end of the intended target audience age-wise. Anthony and Lucy are really younger than the intended audience. So I have to modify things a bit for them. And I give a little, as Dungeon Master, I give them a little more help than...
Yeah, I noticed some of the prompting that you were kind of leading questions, leading them through the dialogue, that sort of thing.
I wonder if he knows anything about this. But also they don't know D&D, so they need to learn how to, what's expected of them, what kind of problems they need to solve. Not even how to solve problems, what kind of problems there are, what kind of opportunities there are. So in the first adventure, it's fairly standard. Bella is way into it. When it's her turn for her character to talk, she stands up and she starts like emoting and acting. It's awesome. It's so great. She loves it.
I think she would love being on the stage. Like, oh yes, like in a play. I think that would be awesome.
Yes. So and Lucy does really well, actually. It's like her there are times when her character doesn't perform well and you can see the disappointment. Okay, but I kind of modify things for her. But her character, she plays a dwarf cleric, a female dwarf cleric, has a knack for, like, she can roll those dice really well or something, because she has a knack for like smashing her enemies to bits. Like, her character is the most powerful one in the party.
She's a little bit fierce.
She may be small, but she's fierce. So, but we did have an issue where, like, it can get complicated. You have different dice to roll. You've got to look at your character sheet. There's lots of stuff to keep track of. And this is one of the reasons why they recommend a little bit older. So Anthony got a little overwhelmed during one of the battles and had a bit of a meltdown. Like, I can't take it. And, had to hibernate under his blanket for a few minutes. And the great thing was the other kids were patient with him. They didn't get exasperated. They, got his blanket. They were willing to sit and wait till he felt better. We kind of moved on from his character. It wasn't his character's turn, so we started, like, maybe if we did a little bit, it would help him to want to get back into it. But one of the things I figured out was if I can make him laugh, that helps him get. So I introduced another character into there was a battle in the town, and so I had the town drunk show up.
Okay, I missed, but where was I during this?
I don't know.
Missed this part.
Well, you don't pay attention to that. It was so funny. So it was like a whole Captain Jack sort of thing, and he's standing on the sidelines of the battle, kind of like talking to them, catcalling, sort of like he's got his beard. He's like, he says to the wizard, "Oh, wizard, shoot some frost. What are your frost beams at my beer? It's got a little warm over here. Well, not so cold. It's frozen." And I was just making it all silly and crazy, and they all started laughing, and Anthony started laughing, and that really helped. So it's kind of funny how you just, when you're playing with your kids like this, I mean, it's very different than how I would play with other adults, or like friends or that sort of thing. That's one of the things about D&D is you adapt it to the people you're playing with. And so playing with my kids, it's a lot of fun. I really like doing this with them. I get to act a little bit. I have different voices and yes, Melanie's rolling her eyes at my voices. Yes, I know. But there's all kinds of different characters, and you have to, being dungeon master is no walk in the park. I mean, you've got to keep a lot of stuff, balanced, but they're patient. That's the nice thing is they're patient. They don't get antsy when I'm looking stuff up. So it's fun. It's fun. And I do wish we could play more. It's just that when we have free time, it's somewhat limited. I mean, there's so many things they want to do. They want to, like Sunday afternoons, we want to watch Clone Wars and Rebels, because that's the only time they watch it. Oh, but then the Patriots are on. And but we want to play D&D. Oh, but we want to have iPad turns. Oh, we could do that on Saturday, but the Saturday is, showers. Everyone's taking showers in the afternoon or doing something else, and it's hard. We don't have evenings to play. They're young for that. Once they're older, that actually might be a thing. Once they're all teenagers,
right?
Having a game night, like a Friday night game night, would be a possibility.
It's true.
That would be fun. Anyway, so that's what we did there. So one other thing I wanted to mention, we were talking about before. So Bella's taking an online biology class. We mentioned.
Mm-hmm. With Homeschool Connections.
From Homeschool Connections, and so there's a. So you tell me what happens. She has a lab that they're doing an experiment.
So they do. So there's the actual biology class meets like one day a week, but then there's also a lab component, which it doesn't meet like every week, or rather it didn't meet the first few weeks and it won't meet the last few weeks of the class, but like it's sort of in the middle of the term. And so, yeah, so she's doing a lab. She did an osmosis with an egg experiment, where she soaked an egg in vinegar and melted off the shell and then soaked it in water and watched it swell, and then soaked it in a sugar syrup and watched it lose weight.
Oh, is that done now?
Yeah.
I missed all that.
Yeah, the egg, then the egg, they squished it a bit and then they threw it away.
Okay.
Which is good.
Yes.
So now her next experiment is supposed to be one on fermentation. And yeah, we ran into a problem where she dropped the ball a little bit in terms of looking ahead and making sure she had the equipment she needed before the lab started. So I kind of dropped the ball in terms of like making sure that
she knew to look at it.
I reminded her that she needed to look at it, because I'm still not really used to this whole lab component part either. So yeah, we ended up, she needed a 2-liter bottle for her lab on Thursday, and she tells me Thursday morning, "Oh, I'm not sure I have all the things for the lab today."
So the lab, she needed that stuff to start the lab on Thursday?
Yes.
Oh, and so she didn't.
And then I like got distracted and forgot to go. I was going to go get it a bottle for her,
right? And
forgot.
So the lab required a 2-liter bottle.
Yes.
We don't drink soda. Like if we drink a soda, like we buy like a 20-ounce Coke at the store and drink
right, because I do not need 2 liters at a time. Like,
we never have 2-liter bottles.
I mean, even a 20-ounce bottle, I usually like drink half of it and then put it in the fridge, and then like
I drink soda rarely, like very rarely. The kids don't drink soda at all. In fact, Bella was saying she doesn't like soda. She just like doesn't like the fizz. So I ended up having to tonight, right at dinner time, run out to the store and buy a 2-liter, the local, convenience store, and buy a 2-liter bottle of lemonade.
Right, because I remembered suddenly, like out of the blue, oh wait, she's supposed to be doing this lab, and I was supposed to do that on Thursday, and now it's Sunday, and oh my goodness, I totally dropped the ball. And I don't know if she was afraid to remind me, or she forgot to, or I don't know what happened.
Yeah. So.
Yeah.
But it brings up this whole thing, like these certain assumptions that people make. And Scouts does the same thing too with certain like merit badge things. Is the assumptions of what families have and do, like what most families have 2-liter bottles around because they drink soda. Most family, like, we just don't have that. Like some of these things that come up, we just don't have that.
I remember when I was a kid and we were supposed to do like a terrarium made out of a 2-liter bottle, and my parents were like, "We don't have those."
Right. When we were doing the rockets, I think we were building rockets with Scouts, and that was another thing, like 2-liter bottles. Or when Isabella was doing the Merit Badge University with Scouts, and the assumption was they would have a phone. I think it was that Merit Badge U, but somebody, like, it was at some point there was an assumption she would have a phone at 13 or 14. Like, right. Yeah, I get it. A lot of kids have phones, but not every kid has a phone. So yeah, that was.
I've had some friends whose high school classes expected them, like required them to have a phone.
Right, that required the kids to have a phone.
Yeah,
like that was a primary way that teachers were expecting kids to communicate, was via a phone, text, or something. Which is a bad idea, I think, but that's a whole nother discussion. Let's so the 2-liter bottle assumption. That's what I call that. Let's talk about what we've been eating this week. We've had a couple of new things. We kind of ran up last week. Ran up against, what are we going to have tonight? We didn't know what we were going to have, and you were thinking some kind of soup with chicken.
I had some.
We had some chicken
in the freezer.
In the freezer, and we had broth. And so, what do we make? And so. I think I was looking stuff up, and at first I was thinking chicken adobo, but we're not sure whether that would be popular enough among all the kids. But the coconut milk in the adobo recipe I was looking at kind of gave you an idea.
Right. I'm trying to even remember. This is ages ago.
The coconut chicken soup, which was is very much like a
well, because I misunderstood, and I thought that you were saying like a chicken adobo soup, and you were left reading off the list of ingredients, and I thought that they were, and I was like, oh, that sounds like a good soup,
right?
And
so we ended up making a coconut chicken soup. It was basically like the Thai tom kha gai, except the big difference is no lemongrass.
Right. But it was like coconut milk with lime and like lots of vegetables. I had mushrooms and carrots and onions. And yeah, it was good.
I mean, I think the big lesson there is just like to adapt. Like, have a well-stocked pantry. So because we had, limes and we had coconut milk and we had, the chicken in the freezer and that sort of thing. And we had broth. So we could make, you throw it together and kind of, and then bring in all of the Thai flavors, I mean, that's what you kind of did. I mean, if we had lemongrass, that might have been good. It might have really made it although I'm not sure if the kids would like it, but
yeah, I don't know.
So, and then the other thing was, yesterday was the feast of Ignatius of Antioch, Saturday. And that's one of Anthony's patron saints.
Because he's Anthony Ignatius.
So, the tradition is we have some kind of treat for dessert. And you wanted to make brownies, but you wanted brownies that Lucy could eat too.
Well, yeah, Anthony wanted brownies.
Right. That was his choice.
When I asked him what he wanted.
Yes.
Yeah, and I try as much as possible to cook things that like everybody can eat. And so what I prefer is to cook with almond flour because, well, that way people are getting,
Well, for one thing, she's not allergic to almond flour.
Right.
Lucy isn't. But also, yeah, almond flour is a nut flour, so it's got all that protein.
Right. Lots of nice protein and fat and not a lot of carbs.
The good fat.
Right. The good kind of fat. So, yeah, but the last time, and I've made like a almond flour brownie recipe a few times before using a King Arthur flour recipe, but it's a little bit gooey and fudgy.
It becomes more like fudge.
Yeah. I wanted something that was a little bit more cakey. And so I went looking, I'm thinking, well, I know that the muffins I make for her use almond flour and like mix it with a tapioca starch in order to sort of create a little bit more of a muffiny kind of crumb, so to keep it from being that kind of fudgy sort of texture. But I could not find a recipe for what I wanted to do.
Google used to have a website, a recipe search website that was pretty cool, which is you enter in the ingredients you have, and it showed you recipes that had those ingredients.
Right. It let you limit, like, I want to make brownies and I want to include this, and this, and exclude this, and this. And it was really functional and it was great. And then they just decided to get rid of it. And I asked on Facebook and a bunch of my friends had suggestions, none of which yielded any results for the kinds of, they're like, oh, I use this all the time. I use this. But they're not people who generally do like lots of specialty, allergy, gluten-free cooking sorts of things. My problem is that a lot of the recipes that use nut flours, if you're just Googling, tend to be like either paleo or keto.
Which is not what we're looking for.
And that's not what I'm looking for. For one thing, that ends up like limiting the, they want you to use different kinds of sweeteners, and I just want to use sugar. Or they don't, or they're like vegan recipes that don't want to use eggs and dairy. And I actually need to put eggs and dairy in Lucy's baked goods because she has an allergy to them, but eating them cooked doesn't affect her, and that actually helps her to develop a tolerance for them. So I try to squeeze them in whenever I can. I don't want to make a dairy-free or an egg-free version of things. Anyway, I just get so frustrated. I end up doing a lot of making things up on the fly
and hoping it comes out.
and hoping it comes out. Like my kitchen, basically, when it comes to baked goods, is frequently a test kitchen. And the problem is that I frequently don't keep careful notes, and I don't write down what I did. And so the next time I have to start from scratch, like from the same place again.
We're going to have to figure out a way to help with that.
I try when I think that something's really working, I do frequently write down notes, but sometimes, I just don't keep good records.
I might have found the Google recipe search in a backdoor sort of way. Interesting. Yeah.
Anyway,
yeah.
I ended up just making the King Arthur almond flour brownies and then adding some of the tapioca starch, like replacing some of the almond flour with tapioca. It came out okay. It was maybe a little bit too cakey. So I don't know. Back to the drawing board. It's been an adventure learning how to bake with non-standard ingredients.
Yeah, well, I mean, here's hoping that she's going to outgrow her allergies.
We can hope.
Hope spring's eternal. All right, so that's what we've been eating. Let's talk about what we are reading and watching. So, I watched the first half of Avatar again. I've
never seen it.
There are 3 more Avatar movies coming. They were filmed like 3 years ago. It's this crazy. Avatar has just become this crazy, like mad scientist project of a movie series. So James Cameron obviously is the guy behind it, and he invented this whole way of filming it. It was like he was way ahead of its time when he was filming it. Gosh, 9 years ago now. It was a long time ago that the first one came out, and it's a long movie. It's a 3-hour movie, and the basic premise is it's like the same one you've heard. It's Pocahontas essentially. So what happens is humans have found this other planet. It has this mineral that they literally call unobtainium that is only found on this one planet.
Unobtainium. You're kidding me.
And it is the planet's called Pandora. It's Pandora. It's Pandora's box.
Okay.
So they've called it Pandora, and thus they reaped the whirlwind.
Maybe they should have picked a different name.
So it's a verdant planet which it is very deadly planet to humans. The plant life, the animal life, everything is trying to kill humans. There's a native intelligent species, the Pandorans, I think, or no, they're called something else, but I forget. And the humans have developed this system, these avatars, which is these bodies that look just like the aliens that human beings then mentally jack into. Like they remote control it from a control center, but they're now inhabiting that body, like it's their body.
Okay.
And that's how they interact with the natives.
Because the planet is too deadly for them to actually go to...
No, they can. People can walk around in their regular bodies, but they're in suits, and it's less alien. They think it's less... I suppose they do it because it's less alien to the natives. They're of course primitive. So you have big bad corporation strip mining the verdant Eden-like planet that with the idealized native, the noble savage sort of thing going on.
Okay.
And then you have John Smith and Pocahontas, and they obviously will fall in love, and then you get to a point where she finds out he's working for the bad guys, and she feels betrayed, and he's feeling torn, and then wants to profess his love, and then they have to mend everything, and he has to betray his own people in order to save her people and save the planet. And I mean, it plays out by the numbers. It is exactly what you think it goes, exactly how you think it will go. I watched about half of it. I was an hour and a half in, and I'm like, yeah, this is the point at which we just go into the whole she thinks he's betrayed her and the whole like nonsense thing, and I'm like, that's enough for me. I think I'm kind of done. Maybe I'll go skip ahead to the end where it's the big battle scene. That's kind of a fun bit, and maybe the whole ending where they explain how Pandora is all, or it's like Gaia or something. I don't know. It's some weird. eco message thing, but it's Avatar. It's a big deal. So I watched that. I also watched another movie. It's a 2019 Will Smith movie called Gemini Man. So this one plays out like most action movies. You know, it's an action movie, the globe-trotting action movie. He's the action hero. He's been betrayed by his government, is now being hunted as a fugitive. You know,
So
again,
like Jason Bourne.
pretty much. The hook on this one though is that he's the best assassin in the world, but he's got morality, he's got a conscience. He only kills bad guys. Like he only kills terrorists. And
Yeah, that's what they all say.
and he only he's only ever killed for his country. You know, he was a Marine and now he works for the Defense Intelligence Agency, and he only ever killed for his country, never apart from that, etc., etc. So he retires, and then a team of guys come to kill him. And then it turns out that 25 years previously, a former associate took some of his DNA and cloned him, and has been raising his clone to replace him. So, he's him, but 25 years younger, and has been sent to kill him. So he's being hunted by his younger 25-year-old self. And it's
so we have lots of special effects of Will Smith playing against Will Smith.
Yes, a de-aged Will Smith. There's plenty of uncanny valley to travel in this movie. The de-aged Will Smith doesn't look a lot. I mean, looks kind of like Will Smith from Fresh Prince. I mean, it's about that age, but it's still kind of weird looking. It's the first movie of the kind. It's Ang Lee is the director, so he does these sorts of things. So a couple of interesting bits about it. The idea of if you are we a product of our genes? Like, is he a great assassin? Great soldier, great whatever, because of his genetics? Because that's all he's basically transferred to this younger guy.
So it's a nature versus nurture sort of story.
Well, it kind of asks that question. Like, why did I can't remember the character name, but Hogan, something like that. I don't know. It doesn't matter. Why did Will Smith, the elder, why was he such a great assassin? Was it because of his life experiences built on top of his genetics, or was it mostly the genetics? Like, can he shoot a guy on a speeding train from 2 kilometers away because of his entire life experience, or because his genes allow him to do it? And so there's a bit of that, but they also play with the idea of conscience and morality. Is morality innate? Because he starts, like, the older Will appeals to Junior's morality. It's like, in your heart that this is wrong. I know that because I know it's wrong. So there's a sort of
So is morality innate or learned?
Right. So some of these questions that come up, and then in the end, I'm going to kind of spoil it, but sorry, it's not a great movie, so it's not a huge spoiler to tell you this, because you could see this coming from 2 kilometers away with a speeding bullet. That the bad guy who cloned Junior also had cloned he raised Junior as his own son, but he had cloned an army of Juniors who were stripped of the ability to feel pain, to have feelings, etc.
So they sound like Cybermen, kind of.
No, I mean they didn't have mechanicals.
No, but just in terms of like that's the sort of
like the Doctor Who
psychology.
Yeah,
Cybermen.
Right. So they were kind of stripped of elements of the humanity, and talking about how this is better because we don't know mother or father have to send their child off to war and to lose them to war, and this is no people have to die anymore. And it's this sort of Hollywood idea that somehow clones aren't people. Like, these are people. It doesn't matter how they come into being. These are people. They have souls.
They're still human beings. You can't.
Right. So it was interesting on those levels.
Right.
But it suffered from a lot of the problems that such movies have, which is things like the believability problems. Like apparently he has unlimited sources of money. He can move between countries at will
with no need for passports and
right.
Yeah.
Like there's no at one point he has a friend who's a pilot, of course, who gets his hands on a Gulfstream G4, and then they fly it to Budapest and land it there, and nobody seems to care. And then they have guns somehow. Like they can always get guns. That's the other thing, is they can always get more guns. It's kind of funny, like these movies, like these big leaps and assumptions that they make of the sorts of things that they can do. Oh, and then you get shot, you just smack a Band-Aid on that and you're good to go. Like within 6 hours. I'm sorry, it doesn't matter where you're shot, like in the shoulder or in the calf. If you get shot, if you don't die, which you could, it doesn't matter. Like you shoot someone in the leg or the arm or the shoulder, whatever. There are big veins. You could die, but you're out of commission. Like you don't walk away from that. Oh, there was one where this woman who's one of his allies, she gets shot in the thigh, and she puts a tourniquet on it, and now she's hobbling around shooting, and I'm like, no. She's in shock. She's not shooting. She's not walking around shooting the bad guys. So, movies. So,
yeah, you kind of suspend your disbelief or something.
It's funny, when I was a kid, when I was much younger, again, when I was about the age of Junior in this movie, I love these movies. They were fun. They were cool. I still watch, action movies. I saw the one with Chris, one of the Chris's, the Thor Chris Hemsworth. Chris Hemsworth?
That sounds right.
Yeah. The Hemsworth who's Thor. He did a movie where he was like a mercenary. So that was pretty good, but it had a lot of the same, like, completely unbelievable battle scenes. Like 15 guys would if you'd done to what this one guy suffered, 15 men in a row would not be able to survive this. You know what I mean? Like, this is enough to kill 15 men, what he walks away from at different points. But it was a little enjoyable. But I liked these movies a lot more when I was younger, and
less skeptical,
less knowing. The funny thing is I like books that feature these spy thriller things, because the books I read, at least, the characters do have to deal with the consequences of being injured and the consequences of trying to get from here to there.
I think it's easier in a book because you don't have the expectation. Yeah, you don't have the expectation of the frenetic pace, whereas the action movie genre, like, it's all about the pacing.
Oh my gosh, yes. I'm watching the movie and I know exactly what's going to happen from moment to moment. Okay, at this point we're going to have a chase through the city and shooting at each other, and it's going to end this way, where the good guy doesn't catch the bad guy. But then we're going to have an extended sequence of the good guy in a reflective time where he's talking with his colleagues or cohort about his innermost feelings and thoughts about this situation they're in, and his doubts and his resolve, and then as we travel to the next location where we're going to have the next. I mean, it's every movie there's like this, whether it's Mission Impossible or Gemini Man or whatever whatever movie it is, the Schwarzenegger. They always do this all the way back to Commando, which was again in 30-something-year-old retrospect, was still an awesome movie in the hugest, campiest way. But yeah, I remember when I watched Commando with my buddies, we counted, like, he killed like 150 guys in the final battle scene. Like, we counted.
You counted. That's such a guy thing to do.
Oh yeah, it was such a teenager thing. Like, dude, we gotta count. Like, and it was like 150 like soldiers he kills, like ones and twos at a time. It was nuts. Anyway, and then for reading, I did finish the Dresden novel, the Harry Dresden novel, Ghost Story. And as we talked about, you and I, this one is where he almost lost me, Jim Butcher, because this book literally changes everything. Yep. And it's so very different from what came before, and it kind of ends it in a different location, and it was a bit of a slog through the first half of it.
The pacing is kind of slow. Yeah.
The first half is slow, and
in a way there's a craftsmanship to it, to the decision to go from frenetic pacing to slow. I mean, I think that thematically it works really well.
Right. The previous book, which sort of bookends with it, literally, I mean, it flows from one into the other. The previous book was like crazy pace.
Right. I mean, it's interesting to see, like, from a craftsmanship point of view, that he can do this kind of slow pace versus fast pace novel. But yeah, it sort of gives you a little bit of whiplash when you're reading like through them, and just like you suddenly, whoa, now we're slowing way down.
And it's not just the pace, but he also just changes the whole everything. Like he basically changes what we got used to in the first 12 books. Like in the 12th book, he just like sheds it all, and where it's almost a blank slate for, not really, but there's almost a blank slate for 13.
Right.
In 14, it's everything changes. And so I think that's one of the reasons what we were talking about in last time we ended up talking about Battlestar Galactica. So,
right.
So that's what I've been reading, watching. I've got a new book I'm reading, but I'll talk about that next week. I should be done with it by then. What have you been reading and watching?
Let's see. I've been watching, well, not a lot, but I did watch another episode of Endeavor, the BBC mystery show, police procedural, I guess.
Yes, where lots of people die in the English countryside.
In Oxford.
In Oxford.
In the 60s.
Right.
I mean, it's kind of fun, like this second season, and no, I'm in the third season. It's a little bit more like heavy emphasis on like, yes, we are in the 60s. I mean, it's still like sort of beautiful Oxford, and there's elements of it that kind of feel like that's older. Yep. And I didn't know if it's just because it's British or what. But yeah, you definitely start to see some of the 60s things. And I'm also starting to notice that the writers really love literary references. There was one episode that really riffed on like The Great Gatsby. And there's a character who's very, very much like Jay Gatsby. Uh-huh. And it's kind of interesting. There was like a whole string of references to like Jaws in one episode,
which is not 60s.
Which is no, but like I said, the literary references aren't sort of the time of the show. In fact, some of them are later than the show is set. In fact, there was a Terry Pratchett reference in one of the episodes, reference to the City Watch series. So that was kind of fun.
But you ran into an issue unique to the stream that you were watching.
Well, yeah. I mean, the thing is that Amazon has picked up the show not directly from the BBC, but from PBS, that ran the show on their mystery series.
Right, PBS Mysteries.
PBS Mysteries. And so they have, like, the intro is like the whole PBS Edward Gorey mystery. Anyway, but what is not really explicit in any of that is that PBS edits and cuts the shows that they
get from BBC.
They get from the BBC, because the runtime, I guess, in Britain is longer. They have like longer slots to put shows in.
Right. Well, we are very fanatical in the US about 22-minute or 56-minute. That's how long the show is. In even on PBS, which doesn't have ads, it's still 22 or 56. Whereas in Britain, they don't have a problem with doing 90 minutes or whatnot.
Right, and the episodes are already long, even on the PBS version, but they cut, like, I found a review on Amazon which finally explained that they cut between 10 and 20% of every episode.
Which the PBS has always done and drove me nuts because it makes the shows unwatchable sometimes.
Right. I mean, I kept thinking, like, I'm watching them kind of late at night, and I'm kind of sleepy, and I'm maybe nodding off occasionally, and I kept feeling like I'm missing something. But
what happened to this character? Where did that person go?
Right. Well, evidently there was a problem in the show itself, that he's dating a woman in, I think, season 2 who disappears in season 3. Like he undergoes a traumatic experience at the end of season 2. And then when season 3 comes back, evidently he's decided that it's not going to work out between him and her. And
the actress probably got fired.
Right. Who knows? Right. Maybe the actress moved on to something else, but there's no explanation. And I'm still not 100% sure if there was an explanation that the BBC gave you that PBS cut, or if both the BBC and PBS are guilty of of cutting things out of the show. Ditching the character. But I do feel like there's been some discontinuities that maybe there were some small scenes that were cut that might have at least made it feel a little bit less
disjointed.
Yeah. So that was my first. I really like the character and I like the show. I like the pacing and the format, and it's just really beautifully done. But I'm going a little bit crazy. The Amazon review I said you should just buy the Blu-rays, and I don't want to buy the.
You're not going to watch it again,
right?
So
I don't want to buy it. I just want to see the whole episode. Why can't they do that online? I mean, there's no time constraint online. So why did Amazon get the cut PBS version as opposed to getting it from BBC?
Well, there's probably some sort of financial it's a sort of thing.
Yeah. Follow the money.
Yeah. I wonder. Oh, yeah.
I looked. I couldn't find it.
Yeah. Daily Motion is a British version of YouTube, and they often have the British shows on there because British copyright works differently over there. But if you Google Endeavor, you get space shuttles.
Yeah, there's a couple trailers and like one or two scenes.
That's a bummer.
But no episodes.
Yeah.
So then what I've been reading was, I'm going through a period where I'm like juggling like half a dozen books, which I'm making very slow progress in. A lot of them are nonfiction, which I really shouldn't read so many nonfiction at a time, but I get greedy at the library and I grab a whole bunch. So I'm not going to talk about any of those because I'm not making enough progress to make it worthwhile. But I did finish one book.
You read it in a day.
I read it in a day. It was a quick read. So it's The Awakening of Miss Prim, which is, despite the name, which sounds very English, is actually a novel that was originally written in Spanish and then translated into English. The character's name was Prudencia Prim. I think that was deliberate on the author's part. The author evidently really likes English literature because she refers heavily to Jane Austen, especially to Pride and Prejudice, and to Louisa May Alcott's Little Women. Like, she obviously really loves...
Prudence Prim sounds like a Jane Austen character.
Right. Or actually... sounds like an Alcott character too.
Right.
Anyway, the novel really kind of feels almost more like a parable at times than a novel. And the basic structure feels very much Pride and Prejudice. So you've got Miss Prim is your heroine, and she's a woman who feels like she was born in the wrong time. Like, too late. She should have been born a century earlier.
Yeah.
Anyway, she has a PhD, I think, in literature. It's never really goes into detail, but she's not using it. She just kind of evidently got it because she's sort of a perfectionist. But the novel opens with her responding to a help wanted ad in the newspaper. It's a really great setup. And she arrives in this small countryside town. It's not exactly clear in what country we're in. It kind of feels like we're maybe in Spain, maybe in France, maybe we're somewhere on the edge because the names are all kind of international. The hero, the love interest, is never given a name.
Really?
She refers to him as the man in the wingback chair because when she first meets him, he is sitting in a wingback chair. And I'm not sure why we never find out his name. That was one of the things that kind of bothered me in the novel. Most of the characters feel a little bit flat. They feel more like types than fully fledged people.
Right.
But anyway, she arrives and he's wanting he's advertised for a librarian to organize his books. But he doesn't want anybody with any job experience, and he doesn't want anybody who's a graduate or a postgraduate, he says.
Okay.
Which is a very strange ad. And so although Miss Prim has a PhD, she decides that this is an intriguing enough job that she thinks she can talk herself into it despite her degrees.
Okay.
So she arrives and she is shocked that this beautiful house in this little bucolic village is filled with children. Something like 16, I think, when she arrives. She can't quite figure out what his relationship is to the children. And she's told that her job isn't to actually do anything with the children, but she just has to sort of be able to tolerate them.
Right.
So it's interesting. It turns out that this is the town is a sort of utopian community. I've seen several reviews mentioned Rod Dreher's Benedict option. This was not written with that in mind, but it certainly feels like it could be. The whole town is kind of organized around a Benedictine monastery, and the man in the wingback chair turns out to be a convert who has organized this town in order to give himself sort of the perfect community. He seems to be kind of an eccentric and rather rich man.
Okay.
He has in his care 4 children who are the children of his sister who is dead, who has left him as their guardian. And he's basically homeschooling them. But he is a scholar of ancient literature, languages, like he speaks ancient Greek and Aramaic and all sorts of obscure languages. I can't even remember them all. Like, the kinds of things that are written on cuneiform tablets and stuff like
Akkadian and yeah.
Right. So he's like speaks something like 20 esoteric languages, and he's got these 4 children who he's homeschooling, but it seems like the entire community is basically this intentional community, and all of the children of the community are sort of being taught by various adults. Like one woman specializes in botany, another woman specializes in literature, and so he does basically the language portion. He's teaching the kids Latin and Greek and a smattering of Aramaic just for fun.
Just for fun.
Just for fun. It's really kind of, it's a novel that was very popular among homeschoolers, and you can understand why. This sort of idealistic, intentional community
of homeschoolers.
Of homeschoolers, right. Most of the people in the town support themselves through their cottage industry, like they run their own businesses. Never really exactly clear how the financial stuff actually works. It seems a little bit sketchy, kind of wish fulfillment rather than
not sketchy as in illegal, but sketchy as in not well thought out.
No, I think the idea is supposed to be very Chestertonian and distributist, but I'm not an economist, and I'm not sure how fleshed out it is.
Sure,
but the main ideas are really this. Obviously, you're going to have a romantic relationship between the man in the wingback chair and Miss Prim. It's just, you can see it from like the minute they meet.
The awakening of Miss Prim is the awakening to love.
Actually, it's not, though. What I really liked about it is that it's not, because as she discovers that she is falling in love with him, she starts to realize that the actual barrier between them is, in fact, the fact that he is a man of faith and she is not. She is entirely a woman of the modern era. She's skeptical, and she doesn't know she realizes that there can never be a life with them unless they see eye to eye on that, because his faith is so important to him that he's organized his entire life around it, around this Benedictine monastery. And
interesting.
So yeah, I liked it. The ending was kind of abrupt, and she didn't really. She sort of is one of those books where it hints at what's going to happen, but never really gets explicit. I felt like it was a parable and not really well fleshed out, but it was a thoroughly enjoyable read, and I enjoyed every page of it. And it was it's sort of the kind of book that you want to read when you're on vacation. Like, just, you want something that's fun and kind of lighthearted and makes you think a little bit, but not too hard.
Like most of my books.
Yeah, pretty much. It was fun. I definitely give it a thumbs up.
Cool. All right. So that's what we've been reading and watching. If you've been reading and watching something interesting, let us know. We'd love to hear about it. We're always interested in getting recommendations. In fact, that's how I find out a lot of things. So yeah, let us know. So let's talk a bit about today's gospel in the Mass, today's readings. All the readings were good. But today's was the famous render unto Caesar what is Caesar's gospel. And a couple of thoughts came up with that from that for me. First, I love this idea that the Pharisees, the underhanded, evil Pharisees, they try to trick Jesus by flattering him. Oh, we know that you're a truthful man and you teach the way of God and you're not concerned with anyone's opinion because you don't care about status. So what's your opinion on the tax? It's like, yeah, that's not a trick question at all. And then, of course, Jesus sniffs him out. Why are you testing me, you hypocrites? And then, as you know, he says, show me the coin that you used to pay the tax. Okay. Whose face is on it? It's Caesar's. Okay. Give to Caesar what is Caesar's, give to God what is God's, and that's that. Which is a very neat way of getting out of the trap, because if he says pay the tax, he alienates everyone in his audience who hates the Romans and thinks that they're being taxed too much. If he says don't pay the tax, then they can go to the Romans and say this guy's telling people not to pay the tax, and he can be arrested.
Right.
So Jesus neatly sidesteps that by saying, if that's Caesar's inscription on it, then give it back to him. But give to God what is God's. So there's that surface level, and it's interesting how often, like very often, homilies tend, and people just tend to focus on the give to Caesar what is Caesar's aspect, our duty to our country, to government, and that sort of thing, our civic duty. But today, the priest at Mass was saying that, and it was a guest priest again. It was saying, yeah, sure, render to Caesar what is Caesar's, but give to God, as Jesus says, what belongs to God. And so what belongs to God? Well, everything belongs to God. Like we need to do our civic duty. We need to get and do what is good for the community. So it's not just to give to the government, but to give to our community, our neighbors. But we give to God everything. Like everything is dedicated to God, including what we give to the civic duty, to government, to the community. So that was interesting. And you had an insight as well.
Right. To me, what stands out is the idea of what's the image that's on the coin is the question that Jesus asks. Now, he sort of skips over the intervening step in the analogy that he's doing. He says, whose image is on the coin? He doesn't ask when he jumps to render unto God what is God's. He doesn't really make explicit the idea of whose image is on you.
Right.
But I really think that is a fruitful line of questioning, is like the idea of we are made in the image and likeness of God. And so when he says, render unto God what is God's.
Well, what is God's? What has his image?
Right. We specifically have his image in a way that nothing else in creation does. In the way that the coin has the very specific image stamped on it of Caesar's, we who received God's name when, we were baptized, we were sealed with the sign of the cross. We have his image, not only at the moment of creation when he makes Adam and Eve in his image, but then when we are recreated in Christ, we have his image in a special way. And so that idea of rendering unto God what is God's means that we owe him our entire self. Like if you have to give the coin to Caesar, then what do you have to give to God?
What is the coin that we owe to God? We are that currency. We are that payment, in a sense, to God. We pay ourselves to God.
Right. And I remember there was a painting that I saw in a really cool video, and I no longer remember who the artist was, and I'm like hitting myself. I think it might have been Titian. It was a painting that was originally done for a cabinet that was owned by a guy who was a coin collector. And the image that was on this case, which would have had his coin collection, was of that gospel, Jesus holding the coin and talking to the Pharisees. And I thought it was really fascinating, the idea of, as you're sitting there sorting through your coins and looking at all the images on the coins, what image are you made in? Like the coin collection itself becomes an opportunity for contemplation and prayer and to go sort of deeper into the gospel. I just thought that was really interesting.
Yeah. it bears a lot of thinking. I mean, it seems an appropriate gospel. In fact, that's what the priest today was saying was, as we head toward an election, to think about that aspect of. But I think the idea of that we bear the image of God, that carries weight. I mean, it really, when you remember that you bear the image of God, that means you've got God in your. When people see you, and especially if they know you're a Christian, they're seeing God at work in the world. In the sense, your actions, your words, are God's words to them. In a sense, and so if you misshape that, not misshape, if you mar the image of God by your sin toward other people, that's a bad thing. we're sinning, and we're leading people away from God. So I think it's something to bear in mind. I think it's a good meditation to have on this particular gospel.
Right. I was also thinking in terms of like something I read, I think was from Pope Benedict this week, talking about how God is not satisfied with just part of ourselves, part of our lives, part of our attention. He wants all of us 100%. And so that idea of rendering yourself unto God, like holding nothing back. Right.
Yeah. I'm not sure I have more to say about that. I think, I like that. So if you have some insights into that, I'd love to hear what you think about that gospel. And if you have something interesting to say on that, you can let us know. We do want to take a moment as we wrap things up to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create Raising the Bets, including Joseph R., Rick M., John M., Andrew M., and Kelly W. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue Raising the Bets and all the shows at StarQuest. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. So that's it from us. If you have any feedback you'd like to give us on any part of our discussion, you can let us know by going to sqpn.com/bets, that's BETTS, or the SQPN Facebook page, facebook.com/StarQuestMedia, or send an email to bets@sqpn.com, and I'll have links to all the things we talked about in the show in our show notes at sqpn.com. Remember to like Raising the Bets, this episode, on the StarQuest Facebook page. Retweet us on Twitter, where we're at SQPN, and leave comments. Engage with us that way. That's I love to hear from you, like we did from Lily Marie and me on Instagram. Until next time, I'm Don Bettinelli.
And I'm Melanie Bettinelli.
Thank you for listening to Raising the Bets on StarQuest.